Welcome to Critical Café,
Join us as we chat about the latest episode,
the campaign as a whole, and Critical Role in general.
all while we partake in a delicious cup of coffee. So grab yourself a tasty beverage
Settle into your favorite cozy spot.
and get ready for a little geek philosophy. Welcome everybody to Critical Cafe Live. Thanks for joining us. My name's Brian. As always, this is Crystal with me as well. Hello. We're gonna jump in here soon. Just wanted to say a quick thank you again to Luna Lubuffin. She joined us the other day, so if you follow Critical Role, you probably know who she is. We just had a video that was released, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, one of those days. Anyway, it's out now, so really good conversation and chat with her. If you want to go check it out, it's on our channel. So the other thing I wanted to mention is, down in the description below, we always mention that we have ways that you can support the channel with subscribing always and liking the videos and commenting, all that stuff, which is free and easy. But also we have our link to buy us coffee, since this is the Critical Cafe. And just wanted to thank Ruby, who recently went in there and bought us a couple coffees, which was really nice. So if you're listening, Ruby, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ruby.
Yep. And so we'll be plugging ahead. I do want to mention, though, because they're starting at 10 o'clock tonight with the third episode of this, that we're going to be moving through pretty quickly because I don't want to have us over time, to make sure that you can catch it if you are in 10 o'clock our time. We're East Coast, so 7 o'clock on their time, and whatever time you are, it's that time. But the main thing I wanted to just say that the usual practice for all of these, if you watch Critical Cafe for the regular Campaign 3 Critical Role show, is that we normally use Danny Carr's notes to her critical recap to keep us on track and make sure that we haven't missed anything. For this one, I'm using my own notes, so if I miss something, let us know in the comments. If I messed something up, if I spelled something wrong or got some information wrong while I was typing it out, just let me know. But we don't have that fail-safe backup for this one, so just full disclosure there. Other than that, anything that you want to say before we get started, Crystal? Any news and announcements?
No, not really. We had a great interview with Luna. So like Brian said, go check it out. Super interesting. She's a cool girl. And other than that, we're counting down. This is the last episode of this grouping of Candela Obscura Circle group. So next circle, we will have new players. And they just announced those. So I think it's going to be pretty cool. But other than that, no, let's, we got some crazy stuff that happened.
Let's dive in, shall we? So
Yes.
Again, just my notes, and we've got our regular cast that was in the first episode as well. Obviously, they're continuing. This is meant to be a short arc sort of campaign style. It's a 3-episode chapter. So chapter 1 has Arlo and Charlotte and Howard and Augie as the players, obviously, as the characters, and then Matt is the game master. One of the things that I like that they do is they run sort of the intro video like they do with most things, but it gives you a little bit of that feel of what it's like in the world. Then there's sort of this preamble into the actual playing of the game that tends to happen, or at least I'm starting to see that pattern now. And so I'm just calling it introduction, even though they've already kind of been introduced. But this sort of, if you think of as a movie scene, you're like getting the first intro scene here, and it's in the Red Lamp District. And so they've got sort of celebrations and festivities happening in the streets, but it actually kind of, if you think camera shot panning in, it goes to the Getaway Grand Hotel, the 6th floor of that hotel, and there's a middle-aged woman, and she's sort of pulling her hair down, and she's unwinding from her day, and she's kind of complaining about some of the politics with the labor unions and things like that. And then you can also, Matt describes that there's a younger man in the room that's watching her kind of as she's talking, and He's like bare chested, he's laying in bed, and eventually they end up together. And so, I'm sure fun ensues. But when the camera then kind of quote unquote pans back to the street, you kind of hear the bustling streets and all the festivities, and then screams in the distance. It leads you to believe that the screams are coming from where we just were talking about them, but we don't know for sure. And that's kind of how it was introduced at the beginning. We then dive into, I'm going to go through maybe the first 4 or 5 bullets and then we'll pause. But we've got Augie, and he is up early at the Gilded Rainbow Bookshop, and that's where he is living for now, at least. And Alexandra O'Neill, who is the lightkeeper, walks in and kind of tells him of an event that took place overnight. So she's saying, we need your group again. Then we've got Onette Ferris, who is the primary chamberwoman that was involved in the guild and import traffics. She's the one that has mysteriously disappeared from the Getaway Grand Hotel. Again, intro, after an attack. So we, as sort of viewing this, kind of starting putting things together. Witnesses are reporting to see that there's a massive shadowy figure that was rushing through the streets, and they are sent to go investigate. And then Arlo seeks some type of weapon, and she kind of asks, she's like, "Hey, do you have anything that would help with this?" And surprisingly enough, she's like, "Hey, we do. We have something, in fact, and there's this vial that you can apply to weapons." And they go out to find out what's going on. So they head to the Getaway Grand, and they encounter a periphery officer there who's guarding the entrance. And they're like, trying to see what's going on, but they can't get by with it. But they spot that the 6th floor window has been blown out. Again, 6th floor, what we learned before. And they come across Terry, who is a nervous man who's apparently without home, and informs them that he, along with Skitty, has and Enom, I guess, were there last night when the glass broke. Again, all the festivities that were going on, and a large shadowy figure passed by. Enom's missing now, and Skitty is at the Good Gravy Eatery. So that's kind of where we get like the first bit of going on. I'm gonna go to this next bullet, and then we'll pick up at the Good Gravy Eatery. But while there, Howard finds this strange kind of like bits of inhuman flesh, and they're like twitching. So after touching one, it kind of like attaches to his hand and starts burrowing in, and Charlotte removes it and stops it from getting any further damage. So that's kind of where this thing is opening up. So I'm going to pause there. Let's head to the chat. If we've got anybody in the chat, by the way, welcome. You're welcome to join us now and enter in some comments in the chat, and we'll pick it up. If you're catching this recording, then do the same with the comments. Enter in comments if you got anything to say about what's going on. All right, enough of me talking. Crystal, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting off with a bang, I guess. An abduction of a pretty important councilwoman, Miss Odette. I guess from the opening scene, you kind of get the feeling that the guy, he is much younger than her. And just from their conversation, you can kind of glean that they're not married. And so you think it's either an affair, or he's like a male prostitute or something. And she's had a really long day at the office, and she's trying to unwind. And so they've met here at this place, the Getaway, what is it, the Getaway Grand Hotel. And they're in the middle, she's taking her hair down and getting unrobed, and then they get on the bed and have sex. But it pans out, and then you start hearing all these screams, and then we shoot over to Arlo. So it's really a cool intro. And then you're immediately like, okay, all right, well, something just happened to those two people. So the lightkeeper comes in and tells Arlo that she's got another kind of quest for their circle to go on, and it is indeed the pursuit of trying to figure out what happened to this lady. Again, because she's a pretty important person when it comes to like taxes and tariffs and guilds and things like that. And the last place that she was seen was at this hotel. So they all gather up and start talking about, the information that was given to them and decide to go to the hotel. So it's really, it's like kind of let's go see if we could figure out where or what happened.
Yep.
Right. And then there's all this like there's already a police force there. So they go to the back alley because they're thinking maybe there's another way in. Maybe we can get in the back. And they find this blown out section of the wall and glass. And then they also come in contact with this one dude who seems like he's kind of a tweaker, like he's high or he's like he's withdrawing from something, and he's real skittish, and he's got some things tucked under his arm, and he's trying to be real secretive. But they end up being able to kind of like calm him down and talk to him a little bit,
Yeah.
Augie.
To be fair, he also saw
Yeah.
some big giant thing jump out of an exploded window, so I
Yes.
don't blame
So
him for being a little
he's
skittish.
spooked, but he also has like something under his arm that he's worried that I guess the OUP or the police force coming will find. But
Yep.
they talk to him and they figure out that he actually saw all this happen, but he was high at the time, so it made him even further freaked out because he wasn't in his right mind. But then his friend is missing, and he doesn't really know everything that happened. So he kind of sends them to his other friend that's at the Good Gravy, or is it the Good Gravy? The Good Gravy, yeah.
Good gravy eatery.
Um,
Yep.
so already we know something has snatched. Something
Yeah.
has
I
snatched
mean,
these people.
so like, yeah. So it's interesting. They're kind of already on this, on the trail of what's going on. What I find cool about the game and the way they're portraying stuff is that um, all of that could be pretty straightforward as far as like um, how you play it out, like the construct of mystery, like someone being abducted, this is what happened, there's some type of creature, all those things are kind of, they could be pretty straightforward. But what's cool about it to me is one, the role play around it to kind of get, but the feel of this world makes it spookier, makes it feel different, because it's not like we're in a world, again, for those of you that maybe you're catching this for the first time or just watched the first episode, but um, if you're just used to playing a game like D&D and you're used to creatures, you're used to like high levels of magic, you're used to all that stuff, this wouldn't seem as out of the ordinary. But you're in a world that is low level magic basically. It's not like people are going around and casting spells all the time and do those things. So it's like as if something like this happened in our world almost, right? Like
Right.
so I just feel like they're doing a good job, and then you'll see as we go, or I think as we go, you find out even more how they play into the theme of this is a horror RPG, right? Like, and it kind
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
plays out. So,
Well, then they
um,
find these like nasty strips of like moving bacon looking stuff that's gray.
mhm.
It tries to burrow into Howard's hand, and it's just disgusting. So they end up kind of poking some of them in jars and taking them with them. But it's so nasty. It sounds like a type of leech almost, but then in the same instance, it's I don't know.
Yeah,
Again, it's a horror setting. So
yeah,
it's gross.
yes. All right, well, let's keep going. So then, at the speaking of bacon, at the Good Gravy Eatery, they find that's where Skitty is, Terry's friend, and Skitty kind of reveals that there's this multi-armed bear thing that took Enam, who is a musician. Um, and so they were kind of corroborating what those stories were. Interesting, like Augie's like making sure he's got enough to eat and all that stuff. It was a good, like, well role played thing. And um, so they head back, so at the hotel, not really guarded anymore. So they're like, okay, well, let's go in and let's check it out. Arlo distracts. There's a periphery officer there, um, and because she basically pretends to faint, which is really funny, and providing the others to kind of a way for them to sneak in. And then once they get to the room, they see like signs of things being, smashed around and violence and stuff, but there's no blood. And there is a periphery captain there, um, and a young woman that's there, like sitting in the bathroom, named Kara Bellman. And Howard then, like, in talking with him and trying to go talk to her more, it was like one of those things where, like, while you're building up to it, Howard decides to put his hand in his pocket and get some brass knuckles and punch the captain. And rolled well that time, so knocked out the captain, gave him a little bloody nose, and then they were able to kind of talk a little bit more with Kara, and she introduces herself as Onette's assistant, and then kind of hesitantly says that Onette was meeting, secretly this musician named Wayland, and he's also missing now. So we're putting it together a little bit. And then as they start to leave, Argy swipes the badge of the captain. A little bit later, we find out that he also swiped the gun. And then they head out of the hotel. But when they do, there are three uniformed officers and the OUP that enter, and then one of them recognizes Augie. And they're like, okay, let's go figure out what's the connection between these two missing people, both musicians, because there's two musicians now. And then they have sort of a newspaper article that reveals that Waylon is slated to perform at the Revisionary restaurant, so they're going to be heading that way. However, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but then we'll stop. They basically, I think they end with this going to break almost. They realize they're being followed, right? So that's when
Yeah.
they kind of break, and we'll go from there. So let's jump over to the chat. So yeah, so a lot of things going on. They kind of confirm what's happening, and so what are you thinking? Like, are they pretty much getting to the bottom of it at this point, or do you like how is it working out for you?
Well, I mean, we find out she was definitely meeting someone who's not her husband. She was having an affair. So he's not a male
Yep.
prostitute. He's a musician that she
We
somehow
confirmed
met.
that. Yeah.
we figured that part out.
Probably a
They're both,
drummer. No, I'm
yeah,
just kidding.
right. Long flowing. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're gone, and then her assistant is there, so of course they're trying to ask her all of these questions, but she's shaken up, and she's worried about the image of her boss still,
Yeah.
them finding out, like more people finding out she was having an affair, because she's well standing with like kind of, I guess, the governing faction or whatever of the government. And so she's needed a little persuading to kind of tell what she thought was happening. But I mean, all in all, it's just confirmed that the two people are gone, and nobody really kind of knows what happened. We
Yeah.
learned who who the guy was, and that he was also a musician, just like Enon. Um, so that's kind of the only thing that's in common at
Yeah.
this point, and that there was this bear looking creature with a lot of arms, that took
Yeah.
that
Well,
like busted through.
yeah,
So
and to me, too, like, and they haven't, obviously not a ton of like action. This isn't like this big action based game. It's not like, you're rolling initiative all the time and all that kind of stuff. It's different from D&D. But what I like about it is that there are, in this system, there are plenty of opportunities to roll. Like,
yeah,
there are lots of things that they are rolling for, all of which are like interesting. They're interesting turning points of the story. So almost like, and I'm sure this is the design of it, right? Like, it's very similar, like Blades in the Dark and everything else. But this dice pool system thing lets you, when you come to a point where you're like, oh, what's going to happen? It's almost like, oh, well, let's roll and see what happens, right? And even more so than like with D&D or things like that, because it's so structured when you're supposed to roll. And I
Yeah.
feel like this type of game, it's like, Matt usually, or whoever the game master is, going, oh, I think you need to do a check for that to see what's going to happen. Or sometimes the players even suggest that they do some type of role because they want to learn more about something. So I feel like it's so well rounded. The way you do combat and the way you solve like investigations or sneak around, it's all the same. Like you
Yeah.
use the same dice pool. So like from a game perspective, it's one of the things I like about this is that like once you know how to do it, you know how to do all the stuff you're supposed to do. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to like learn 8 different mini systems within the same game. So um anyway, just something I think is it's helping me kind of like learn the game more as they play, and the
Yeah,
stuff that I don't
definitely.
know about, it's like the stuff at the end of the game. Those are the things that I maybe didn't remember, but like it's at the end of the game, so you have time to like
Right.
go through it and work together. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Cool. Here we go. Part two. So we've got again, they're being chased at this point, or followed, I should say, not chased. Charlotte and Arlo and Howard, they're on. They decide to get on. I didn't put the notes here, but because they were being followed, they jump on the rail car, like, and they start like riding the rail, and then like kind of figuring out when are we gonna like get off of this thing, and they decide to split up. So they all start leaving at different times off of the rail car. Charlotte does a little bit later because this agent is definitely seems to be following her specifically, and she goes to the church. Um, but she gets some stress and some damage along the way, trying to get to where she's going, and then she basically hides in this church um, by making some rolls and doing some things. We'll talk about that, and escapes. The group then comes back together eventually at the revisionary restaurant, learning that the trio of Waylon was like recently canceled. The Cara Bellman Onette Ferris assistant, the one that they saw, canceled this performance. So obviously they're thinking she knows something more than she was letting on. They had a chance, but they maybe missed
Right.
something. So that's when they're going to head to the Ferris estate. So should I pause there? Anything that you want to say before we get into the whole like going to that estate? Okay.
No, I kind of feel like
So
that like little area was not really talked about a whole lot. The whole Kara side of things, you know.
yeah,
But other
it's
than
very
that,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, it's
It
another
was like
thread.
ooh, yeah, like we didn't learn all the things that we needed to learn about her, but who knows why that is? Like it could have been that
Yes.
she was hiding something and all those things. But they head to Onette Ferris estate. So this is where she lived. They actually speak with Aaron, who is Onette's husband, and obviously he's kind of upset about the rumors of her having an affair, and obviously that she's disappeared. He kind of thinks, I believe, that she disappeared with this man, um,
Yes.
and but then he kind of shows them he's got this injury on his hand. It's a black spot, and it's causing some bleeding, and he said it was the injury began when he purchased an Otherware Emerald for Onette. Um, and it was put into a necklace by Dorna in the Elizarian Gallery. So now they've got a lead on some artifact that maybe caused this problem. Arlo experiences a bleed while examining the injury. So now we know something's going on. And she's like,
Yes.
hey, it was almost like as she was leaving, hey, you might want to cut off your hand, like
She's like,
that kind of thing.
yes. Hmm?
Yeah. Um,
Amputate.
as usual, all of Laura's characters are awesome. Um, and then she shows the group her own hand, the gloved hand that she always has, and it's got not just like an injury, and it's like a void in her hand, like a mystical void that's just baked in, and that's from past interactions with the Eastons, and she shares that the Red Hand, who's this other shady organization that's sort of an analog of Candela Obscura, but like nefarious in a lot of ways. Um, and they were involved with all these old Farian artifacts. So that's when they decide that they're going to head to the Elizarian Gallery. Um, and we'll pause there to kind of talk a little bit more. But yeah, so it was interesting, like going to see the husband and seeing how all that
Yeah.
played out, and then him revealing that he had been injured in that way and didn't really even think twice about it, like other than it was an injury, right?
Yeah. I kind of feel like he's like the house husband and he is trying desperately to hold his marriage together, but his wife just doesn't care, because
Yeah,
she's so busy and she's stressed. And so she, she's seeking comfort elsewhere. He's even gone so far as to try and procure really expensive pieces of jewelry for her, because he knows that she likes like really prestigious old fair pieces. And so he went to this lady and purchased through her, I think, and had her set it. And I mean, I'm just assuming that where that spot is on his hand is where he held the emerald at one point, because
I
if we go
agree.
back to the intro, Matt described her sitting at the vanity taking her hair down, and she's wearing this really pretty emerald necklace. And she was still wearing it when she got on the bed with her lover, I guess. So now we know that there's this artifact, this old fair artifact that's in play, and it probably is a source of something crazy that's happened because it's caused this issue with his hand already. So, and it is
And
funny because as they're like leaving, Arlo's like, "Oh yes, I would cut that off."
you should cut that hand off. Yeah,
just you should cut that hand off.
yeah.
Very
Um,
calm, but very like, oh.
she's such a like, and in some ways, she's a cross between um, who are the characters I'm thinking of? One from Penny Dreadful. What's her name from Penny Dreadful? The main
Eliza?
character.
No.
You
Is
know
her
what I'm
name
talking about.
Eliza on there?
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah. It's
remember.
oh gosh. Anyways, I know who you're talking about.
So she reminds me of a mashup of of
Ava Green
Penny
plays her.
Dreadful. Yes, Ava Green's character from Penny Dreadful and Luna Lovegood. Like
That's a
you
pretty
mash
good.
them
Yeah.
together, like almost like the ethereal way she speaks is a lot like Luna from Harry Potter to me. And then like, but she's got that like a little bit off, um, kind of vibe. Anyway, uh, really cool character. So the other thing that
Yes.
I thought was interesting, and I don't know if I picked up on it at the time or maybe when I was going back and just thinking about it, but didn't they kind of find out in the first episode of this in the of chapter one when Augie went to go visit his friend at the very beginning and they put the coal in the furnace and the coal exploded and that released the stuff? Wasn't the coal from Dorna? Didn't they get that piece of coal from Dorna? Like, or am I remembering that wrong? I don't
I
know.
think that they were commissioned to go down there and find artifacts from Dorna. And then once they were down there, stuff that they found that was extra, they hoarded for themselves and sold on the side.
Got it.
So
So
they were
that was like,
employed by this person to go down and get artifacts of certain nature. But then, things like charcoal and stuff that they could scavenge extra that wasn't of interest to this lady, they sold as they saw fit because she didn't have a
yep.
clue that they brought that stuff up with them. So,
So the connection is still there, right? Like it
yeah.
seems like it's still funneled through that way. So
Vanessa
interesting
Ives.
stuff. Vanessa Ives, yeah, that's right. Thank you. Um, so they visit the gallery, which is sort of been adorned with this vibe of old Farian artifacts and well, not necessarily artifacts, but recreations, like artist recreations. That's what she says. And so um, Charlotte gets a stress due to the surroundings that are going on there. Um, and then they finally talk to Dorna, and she talks a little bit about like how she was working with the or her affiliations with the Red Hand, but then sees Arlo, and Arlo is escorted out by basically the bouncer of the place, right? Like while everything's going on, and Augie is also grabbed up, and Augie's literally thrown out, like grabbed and thrown out of the place. Um, Arlo doesn't get that; she's told to go out. And then Howard follows outside for a little bit, and then they get outside, and then pretty awesome effects. Like again, this is the best thing about having a budget there. Boom! Like this big sound, the lights flash. Matt scares everybody, and there's a literal type of explosion or some type of a crash happening inside, and this is where this gallery becomes under attack by this many-headed, many-armed, many whatever monster. So Howard and Augie attempt to go in and try to fend off the creature, but they get some damage while they're going there. And Charlotte and Augie and Arlo starts going out. Howard is basically, I think, at some point down, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, so this is it's pretty creepy. And then Charlotte discovers a black glove and a small briefcase, and Arlo uses her powers to kind of understand what's going on with the creature. And then I'll say this, and then we'll stop for a second because then before they move into the sewer, when Howard recovers, he's sort of, oh, okay, and he's cheerful, and then he proceeds to take out his instruments, his surgical instruments, and he takes off his hat and he cuts a hole, like a slice in his head, and he starts to drill a hole into his head, and then pulls out some stuff, and he's like, need to have room to expand the mind, and then puts his hat back on, and they're all like just staring at him, like what's going on, and that was his scar that he took from being out. So let's chat about that. Oh man.
Oh,
Like,
like this
yeah.
monster crashes in, breaks everything up. Like we think has snatched this lady, right? Dorna, and they try to run after it, but two of them get knocked. Howard gets knocked unconscious, like out. And so when he comes to, he just willy nilly starts cutting into his head and
Yeah.
hand drilling out a spot. And no, it was gross. It was so bad.
It was, but like, and I think I said it right before he said it. I looked at you and I was like, I think people forget this is a horror game. This is a horror RPG. And
I
literally right
know.
after that, like Robbie goes, "This is a horror game, right?"
Yeah,
I'm
the whole
like,
group was like,
yeah.
what
Well,
is
the whole
he
group was like that,
doing?
except for Matt. Matt's face
Matt's
was,
face was like,
oh. He's like, because this is the again. Like we have to talk about this from the story perspective, but also from the game perspective. Games like this only work for the genre that they're in if everybody buys in, and when like the system says when you take this stuff you have to take a scar, and you the player decide what that the form of that scar takes. It
yeah,
gives you the ability to help shape the game, and it was brilliant. I thought it was brilliant. Like it was such a good move. Now whether he had that plan for a while, in case it happened, who knows, but if he did, that's still great. But in the moment I was like, that's the perfect way to like pull people into the game. I couldn't have done any better than that. Like, not that I mean, who am I? But like, it was like I couldn't have planned it any better than that. And I don't think a DM could have either. Like, I don't think a DM could have told a player to do it. Like, you have to get that coming from the players. I just thought it was probably one of the like, as gross as it is, it was probably one of the coolest role playing moments I've seen this year.
yeah.
Like, in all the things we've been watching, I thought it was like, man, this
Well, and
person
it
knows the character,
genuinely
knows the game.
used to be a way that they did skull surgery. So
Yes.
That part was cool, that he had done enough research and he'd figured it out, or he's just
Yes.
morbid enough himself to know this stuff, you know?
Maybe, but it makes me think. I have to tell you, it makes me think that from the inception of his character, that might have been a conscious choice of
Oh,
wearing the top hat, like the
yeah,
bowler hat. It might have been like, I'm gonna do this because, and then,
yeah,
well, we'll find out later some other stuff. But yeah, it was great. Um, so
yes. This is good
let's keep
stuff,
going because
but gross
now
stuff.
that he is back up, yeah, this creature is sort of like heading down into the sewer, and I think before it went down in the sewer is when Charlotte threw some of the little obsidian not or nails or shards or whatever they were at it, and it did some damage. So they knew that it would work in some level to damage this creature. So they're like, we got to go after it. They
Yeah,
reluctantly, but they were like, yeah, we got to go. They follow the creature down there. It ends up going into like this tunnel with a lot of different exits. There's this confrontation where you've got all of these arms and legs and monster stuff, and Augie gets grabbed onto. Augie tries to shoots it, and disrupts the necklace of one of them, which is with the same one, the emerald necklace that we're talking about from the beginning, basically. But then gets grabbed, and so it get a little tricky. Howard tries to pull Augie away. There's all this stuff going on, and then that's when um, Arlo kneels down, draws out the ritual stuff, and performs this forbidden ritual, which changes and warps reality in a way that crushes the sewer walls in. It starts bending everything in on this creature, and yeah, that was what did it. And so they basically were able to use this forbidden magic and defeat the creature. All of them pretty worse for wear. Um, they've got some serious injuries, including Arlo's arm now, like where she had the hand, is now going all the way up. And Charlotte, who also was down for a while, her right hand is now, that was one of her scars. Like she can't use her right hand anymore. It was going to be her whole arm, but it ended up being her right hand. And then they head back to the Gilded Rainbow to recover and talk to Alexandra, let know what's going on. And they come up with a cover story about an escaped bear from the zoo, and they need to probe further into what's going on with the Red Hand. So that's kind of how main storyline ends. We'll talk about post game in a second, but yeah, it was pretty intense at the end. It was kind of
yeah,
like everything happened really quick once they got into the sewers.
yeah. I mean, they get down there and they end up being able to throw the last two shards, the obsidian shards, in the beast's mouth, or the entity's mouth. And then Augie rolls really well and is able to shoot the emerald. Because at this point, I think they've all decided that the emerald is the source of power. It's the thing that was maybe holding this creature that they found. Remember, that Arlo had gone through and read through her text, and she had found that there was an endless hunger like
Yep.
entity, and so she pretty much deduced that this was a portion of that, and that it probably had been locked away inside of the emerald, or something had caused it to emerge. And it seemed to all kick off with the emerald. So their thought process was, if we can shatter the emerald, maybe it will dissipate the entity. So they were able to do that stuff, but then, stuff wasn't, like, the thing wasn't dying quick enough, or it wasn't dissolving fast enough, because at this point we figure out all the arms, heads, legs, everything are the people it's consumed, because it has this
Right.
endless
Right.
hunger. So we see the two people that were taken in the beginning. Then we see, Enon is in there. And then we see, like, it's trying to finish eating Dorna. It has a ton of people that it's just amalgamated inside of itself, um together. And so they shoot the emerald, and it starts kind of sloughing off a little bit, but not fast enough that the creature isn't trying to attack them. And it's very,
Right.
very powerful. They're in rough shape. So Arlo really, like, her spell ended up holding off the creature long enough that it was able to finally, like, fully fall apart and ended up killing it, I guess. But she held it back long enough with the walls of the sewer so that it could just, like, melt almost. But they're all in horrible physical shape because this beast has just been really, really tough to deal with. Many of them came away with scars from the game.
Yeah, again, like, and the fact that they have to come up with this is what effect it's having on me, and then change their character. Like, you have to move a point from one thing to another
Yeah.
and kind of explain what's going on. It's, I don't know, game design is good, but also just like story, it all fits together with what they're doing, which I thought was great. Um, so we've uh, for post game, which is also very interesting to me. Um, they've got they talk about all their questions. So if you haven't seen all the way to the end on some of these, they have a series of questions, the illumination circle questions that you do at the end of your game. Um, you answer them, and then you want to also hit your experience points trigger. So Ashley had to do something illegal, make a deal, or deceive. Jolly had to deceive. Laura had to consult her text or acting weird. All those things they all did. Robbie made a plan a few times to do some things. So there were
Mm-hmm.
things that they had to do. They had some resources that they use. So Stitch heals them up, Refresh recovers their drives, um, and then they train to give them an extra die. But then they also broke from the rules a little bit just because they wanted to show how this works. So they went ahead and leveled up. So give them the choice to pick some new abilities for what they can do, which I thought was great. Then, though, they explain what are they going to do to do all those refresh and heal and all those things. Um, Augie went to visit Arlo's house, got a bath, had a good time shopping. Probably the better shopping episode for you because it was really quick. Um, and then, Charlotte went to visit Gertrude and talked to her about, like, and this time explained to her things basically the way they happened rather than sugarcoating some things. And then Howard went home, made a point to say a solitary home, nobody else there. Um, and then there was this sort of box where he opened it up and a mist came out and he sprinkled some scarlet shake on his pipe's tobacco, lit it up, and then started talking. Um, and after talking, this mist went into the hole in his head.
Yeah, I
So
don't know what's up with that.
it's cool. That's what I think. What's up with that?
I mean, kind of, I guess. It's gross.
I
It's
know
like,
it's
did it?
gross.
It didn't come out of his head, right? No, it was just there, and then it went in his head. So,
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I have my theory about this. I have unsubstantiated theory, obviously, is that part of what he's been doing, like from a research perspective, is like conversing with this other entity, maybe from beyond or in another realm. Because I'm blanking on the name he called it. Arnold, maybe, but like it had a name. So whether it's a
yeah,
ghost or some other creature from beyond or whatever it might be, I think it's like he was consulting with it,
right.
and maybe it going into his head was his way of like having a conversation, like where it was speaking brain to brain. Because I was thinking before he had the hole in his head, how would he have done it? And I think it's maybe through breathing, like inhaling, like he always would. But this time, while he was smoking, it went into his head. I don't know that, obviously, but we'll see if there's any
Yeah,
reveal in
maybe
that.
we'll
But
get
that's
some
what I was thinking.
closure on some of that this next
Yeah,
episode tonight,
so cool.
because that's what it ended on, and it was really like, wait, what just happened? Something went in his
Yeah,
head? Like, what? What is happening here? It's gross,
I
but
yeah.
okay, but very interesting. And
Part of
then
me,
also,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
well, sorry. And then also, it's like, did Dorna get out, or was Dorna eaten? You know, like we
We don't
never
know.
know. We
Yeah.
never knew. Dorna could just be hanging out in the sewers.
Yeah, you never know how this is going to turn out. And is it going to be a continuation off of some stuff, or like is it going to be a different branch of the same story tonight? Like I don't know. And one thing I was going to say is that I feel as if uh, like sometimes it's better not to know on some things. Like I don't know if I don't know if I don't know if I want to know the answer of what the blue smoke is going into his head yet, because it's almost more fun to speculate and then wait and let it pay off and find out later, like a few games down the road. Because sometimes, like I think if things get over explained, they lose the mystery, and if you detail everything out, like a perfect example is in a horror movie. What's frightening is the unknown most of the time, not knowing what's around the corner, not knowing what the power is of this creature, not knowing all the things it can do, and not knowing what the effects are going to be on someone else. That's what makes it scary. So part of me is like, uh, for it to continue to be scary, I don't want to know all the answers to everything that they put out there. I want it to be like, we don't know, like
Yeah.
it's spookier that way,
Well,
um,
and does this make us suspicious of Howard? You know, like what's is that one of those
yes,
old Farian like entities housed in his body for its
could
own
be.
good? You know, like for its own purpose?
He
Is
seems
it
to have
riding his body? You know, like
but maybe so. Like it
ugh.
seems to have a switch that he flips sometimes to like goes from, you know,
Yeah.
professor to I don't know. It
Maybe he's a
it's
Dr. Jekyll,
it's
Mr. Hyde.
eh, maybe so. We'll see. I don't know,
I
but
don't
I guess
know.
we'll find out in a little bit. Um,
Maybe.
yeah, yeah, maybe.
Or maybe they'll keep us guessing because after this episode tonight, the next 3 episodes are a total different cast. So we might not ever
That's
know.
true. And we won't know if they are retiring these characters or if they come back like in future
Right.
chapters. I really hope they come back after future chapters because it
I
would
do
be cool
too.
to see how they interact, like if they mix up the groups at some
Yeah.
point, like and form new circles. I don't know. We'll see. um, but really cool. Definitely a break from what's going on with D&D and Critical Role, which obviously we love, but it kind of gives a break. And then since they were doing the last Thursdays off anyway, I think it's a good way to kind of keep things going, kind of parallel stories going on. Yeah, it's good. Awesome.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
all right. Well, I think that covers everything. We've got about
Yeah,
10
we're
minutes
great on
before it
time.
starts.
We got 10 minutes.
Man, made it through.
So good.
Uh, I know, right? Thanks everybody. If you could again subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Most of the people, I have to say, most of the people that watch us are not subscribed, so it doesn't hurt anything to hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything, but it helps us a lot when you do that. So we appreciate it if you do.
Please.
And if you can't, no worries. Just at least join us. If you're subscribed, though, then you can enter into the chat, which is great. So all of our subscribers come into the chat and they can talk to us during the show. We love to have you. So, all right. Well, we will catch you next time. Bye.